Good evening. It's nice to see some new faces here. Oh, I'm so glad to see you, Miss Powell. It's nice to see you. I've been missing hearing you. Let's see. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Well, I'm encouraged. We have a couple more than we had last night, but where are my folks? Anyway, all right. As I said in my email, tonight is the night for you to just tell me what problems you have. Let's start with the APSL. We still have people that are working on the APSL. What problems do you have? Because some of the people sitting in front of me are some of the more successful students. So if you have a problem and you need to ask now, and maybe instead of me telling you, maybe if your peers tell you, that will make it easier for you to understand. Who has a question about it? Let's just do the APSL first. Anybody have, yes.
I'm sorry. I submitted my APSL to turn it in on Sunday, and I emailed Dr. Todd as well. Is there anything else I need to do? Because I don't submit it until she tells me, right?
Okay, so you submitted the compile paper?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the compile paper, she will run it through, turn it in, and then she will tell you to submit it to TaskStream. So you just wait for her to tell you. I would say if you don't hear tomorrow, give her an email and say, I turned it in, and just make sure that it didn't slide through the cracks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because you're wanting to get that grade.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was a good question, and it's that way with me. If you have turned something in and you haven't heard from me, and you think you should have, give me a call. I'm not going to be unhappy if you call me or if you email me and say, hey, lady, where is it? Because in a couple of cases, what's happened is I've been grading papers into the night, and I've finished the paper. I've made all kinds of comments. I've saved it to my file, and I've tucked it down in my doc so that tomorrow when I'm half alert, I can write you an email and something comes up and I forget to write the email, and hey, it's done, but you don't have it. So rattle my cage. It's all right.
Have you started grading any of the, I know you're trying to get the APSLs done first, but if we've turned in our APSL, do you want us to contact you too? Or?
I'm looking down here in the doc and I see, let's see, I can tell you who I have. I have a Coronado paper that's coming next, then I have Fraser, then I have Roberts. And so that means that you must be the one that's up here actually on my screen if I hit Word. Let me make sure. Yes, there you are. Okay, it'll happen. It's just not happening right this minute, but it will happen. Okay, so just make sure. But just know that I try to get the most critical ones out of the way first. Okay, that's a good question.
Dr. Tillman.
Yes.
You don't even get mad when people call you at 7:30 in the morning, do you?
No, I don't. I said call me after 7:30, and this young lady called me at 7:45, and I was just bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. We had a good talk. Yes.
And I have a question. Yes. When I'm doing task 2 APTEL, and I'm talking about my survey, is it okay to say, okay, in one of my questions, I stated this, and this was the whatever percent or whatever I want to say about my answers. Is it okay to talk about my survey like that, in that way?
Well, when you do the narrative, you just go through and talk about each of the questions and what the result was.
Okay.
Then you show the graph where the people can look at it and see the big picture.
Okay.
Now, I've had people do this 2 different ways, and I think the evaluator is going to be okay with either way. If you do the classroom and you talk about the classroom stuff by subdividing it into the 2 areas, then show one graph that has both, but you have to make sure you keep the link between the focus area and the best practice. So somehow, even if you just put the focus area in parentheses beside the best practice on the axis, just so you can keep up with which of those things go with which focus area. Then they talked about the school-wide, and they did the 3 areas and then showed a big graph that showed the best practices. But there again, you've got to make sure you can see, you know, the staff development versus, or the evaluation versus the efficacy, for example. You've got to be able to see which of those 5 areas, because you don't want to lose those 5 areas, because that evaluator is looking to see from task 1 right on down to 4, those 5 areas flowing through your paper, and you just can't lose any of them. Now, I have to say that there is a student, and I've not had anybody do this before, but I think it's perfectly fine. She did a lot of observations, but she did them with only 2 teachers. And she focused on a beginning teacher and an experienced teacher. And she observed them over the 5 days multiple times. And she came up with the difference between.
Dr. Tillman. I wish you would have told us in the beginning. That was smart.
Pardon me?
I said that was smart because the data is consistent. I'm a math person, so
it was, yes, it was a completely different look. And when I first saw it, I thought, oh my gosh, because when I first started reading it, it was like I did these 2 teachers during the 5 days, and I thought, oh my gosh. But then as I went on down, she did them multiple times, and she can show the difference between a experienced teacher and a novice teacher in implementing those best practices. And what made it perfect was when she got to the professional development, it reinforced the fact that professional development needs to be focused to the teacher, because that's why experienced teachers hate professional development that's developed for new teachers. They already have been there, done that, messed it up, and got it figured out. And so it was really a good thing. So I always, I'm forever saying, don't do it this way, don't do it that way. But in that case, that turned out to be a really nice paper, because it flowed so well. And I think it's gonna float, because we can't go back and do the observations, right? So we've got to push it that way. Also, I've always encouraged you to write your own survey, because you're taking your survey questions from your best practices. But I've had one person that did the teacher working condition survey, and they matched. I mean, they gave a structural, here's a picture, here is the best practice, and right under it, here are the teacher working conditions survey that matched that best practice. I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful way to make the point. So I'm saying to you, there are times when things that we say may not work do come out. But you've got to be really careful, because some people, I have said, you can't do the teacher working conditions survey, because what you've done is just throw all of the questions in a particular area in, expecting the evaluator to sort through them and find the ones that relate to your questions or your best practices, and they're not going to do that. You've got to really lead the evaluator and have them see, here's the best practices that I selected, here's the data I collected, here's the gap between those particular best practices and what I saw or what I surveyed, and then here's the gap, and these are the needs that we're going to address. Okay, as long as you can make that flow, and I just keep saying it over and over, because when you get doing the next 4 projects, they're all like this. You've got to look at it and you've got to thread it through the whole project. And so I want you to get used to doing that. That's why I want you to outline. I want you to read through and understand the whole project before you start it. You want your students to do a project with the end in mind. Well, that's what I want you to do. That's what we say in school all the time. We're teaching students with the end in mind. Okay, well, your end in mind is getting through this project. So as you look at the OMA next semester, read through what you've got, outline, decide what are the big headings before you start. Because you've done a lot of extra work, some of you, because you've started thinking you understood and you got halfway through and realized you didn't understand and you had to go back and do it again. So I want you to not have that happen to you again. Okay. Final questions about the APSL or the APTL?
Dr. Tillman, when we do the video for task 3, am I correct in saying that we're presenting the information to the school leadership, the information from task 2, like what we found was the gap and the solution, like our plan?
It's your, yes, your growth plan is what you're going to present.
Okay.
Yes. It's just like in the APSL where you presented the action plan of what you're going to do for student learning. And then, so this you're going to have the action plan or the growth plan for the teacher empowerment.
Okay. And just to make sure I heard you correctly, as I'm finishing 2 right now, for each of the 5 areas that we research, we should show the practice and what is the best practice for the SIS school and the classroom, right?
Yes, you've got to do both areas. What
Okay.
are the, what your best practices were, what your data show, which ones are deficient or where the gap is, and then which ones you're going to address. And if you only have 1 or 2, I'm assuming that you would address both. But if you did a really great plan and you had 5 or 6 indicators, then you might have 3 that were sort of low. And so by then, talk about prioritizing and deciding which 1 or 2 that you're going to work on based on the most bang for the buck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay.
So it could be that when we give our presentation to the administration, they may not want to focus on all 5 things. They may narrow it down and say, okay, so we're just offering a suggestion for all the where we've noticed and what you could do to help it. And then ultimately our administrator would make the decision as to whether or not they're going to do any of those.
Whether your administrator lets you show this to the school improvement team or whether it gets on your school improvement plan, that has nothing to do with your grade. Your grade depends on you making the presentation. You found the problem, you found a solution to the problem, you've planned out how you can attack the problem, and you're showing the administration what you've done from beginning to end. And if they decide that they're going to thump their nose at it, that has nothing to do with your grade. Okay? You've done what's required. Because the big thing about all of these projects is taking you through the continuous improvement process. Because if you once get this in your blood, you'll figure it out and you will do it the rest of your life. Because it works. You can't work on everything at one time. And by
Dr.
now,
Tillman, I have a,
Yeah.
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
On the AppTel, on task 3, it says to talk about your
Who am I
best
talking
practices,
with?
visual checklists, and gap analysis. Are we just kind of summarizing what we've already done in task 1 and 2?
I'm not sure. Tell me again. Who am I speaking with?
It's Kelsey Nunn. I'm on the phone. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. So frame your question again.
So in task 3, when we're like leading up to our growth plan, the prompt says to talk about your best practices, visual checklist, and gap analysis. Are we just kind of summarizing what we've already done in task 1 and 2?
In a way, as you identify the needs, you're wanting to support that with evidence. So you would be restating some of those things.
Okay.
And you might give supporting research from your previous research to support the fact that this is a need. And that if you can work on this, then students usually improve, according to whoever.
Right.
So in a
So
way,
we don't necessarily need to like copy our visual checklist back into task 3.
no, you're not wanting to just pull all that into. You're using only what you need to support what you write in 3.
For our growth plan.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Your growth
I was starting on it and I felt like I was being kind of
Yeah, your growth plan should
repetitive
address
because I was
all
trying to
5
like
areas.
summarize each.
But we only
Right.
really need to talk about the research and the data analysis and all that from the things that we chose and why we chose them. We don't
Right.
have to go back and talk about everything again.
No.
Just what we're putting in our growth.
Yes, just to support what you're talking about in 3. Yeah.
Okay.
And Dr. Tillman, in number 2, and I'm supposed to go over all the questions in my survey. I got 25 questions. And then I have 9 on my walkthrough. So I have to go through each one, which is, 34?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And remember, we said, try not to make it hard on yourself. But sometimes we do. And I think I maybe made some comments on that. On your, about your plan? I don't remember just right off the top of my head, but is there any way that you might be able to cut some of those down in some way?
Okay. I can. I just wanted to make sure it was okay.
Well, you want to do it strategically. You don't want to take the butcher knife to it. Just a little boning knife, maybe, because you got to have. You don't want to get to the point where you have one best practice for each of the 5 things, because then you really don't have any data. You're just saying, okay, this is good and that's not. But what are you going to fix? Well, you don't know because you're still looking at those general headings. So you've got to have some things, some specific best practices about your focus group so that you can see where in the focus group is the problem. Okay. It's one thing to say, well, we're having trouble with teacher evaluation. Well, what's the problem? Is it that it's being done unfairly? Is it that the administrator doesn't observe the whole class? Is it that the post-conference happens 3 weeks after the observation? You know, what is it that's the problem? You don't know if all you say is we have a problem with teacher evaluation. So the questions on the survey should have fleshed out the best practices that you wrote about. So if you wrote about 4 best practices, then you would have probably 4 questions that you would have asked, and you would zero in on, oh, the principal just has trouble getting the feedback. We don't ever get feedback. Well, that's a lot different than the principal doesn't do it right. He might be doing it right, he's just not sharing it with you. So that's a completely different problem, you see. So you have to be able to flesh out the problem using those questions. And if you're doing your dissertation, you'll have probably more questions than you have, but you don't need to do a dissertation list of questions. There's a middle road. Okay. Did I lose Miss? I'm looking for, there she is. Miss Powell, what questions do you have?
Do you have to have an annotated bibliography in task 1? Is that required?
In the APTL,
Yes.
The APTL does not require an annotated bibliography.
Okay. Well, I submitted it, and Dr. Todd, I believe, mentioned something about it, so I haven't submitted it to you yet. I'm almost done with task 2. So I just kind of want to wrap up task 1 and be done with it. It's good. I think she said it was good, but she mentioned the annotated bibliography. So,
well, some people are doing that. I think she said in her, maybe her class, that you could do an annotated bibliography. Am I right about that? People that went to the class, that you could do it. And
Yes, ma'am.
I still can't tell you why they said you need a bibliography. I quite think it's
well, I mean, I didn't want to point out anything from another session, but I mean, I have a friend, and they didn't have to do one. And I was like, well, I was under the impression I had to, but I'm really on a time crunch now and trying to get myself caught up. So if it's okay, I'll just go ahead and submit to you what I have.
Yes, don't do it. I mean, you know, it's, I don't want to come across as saying, be a minimalist. I don't want you to do that. But some of you are such perfectionists that you would do this massive, massive paper when a massive paper is not required. A good, strong paper is required.
Okay.
But, you know, there's no need to have a 1 that should get an 8 on a 4-point scale and not get to 3 and 4 and, you know, have a grading problem because of that. And as an administrator, you're going to have to deal with that. You know, how many times do you edit a grant proposal before you send the stupid thing in? Well, you not past the deadline, you know, it's got to be mailed by midnight on such and such a day. There's a time you've got to close it down. And if there's a typo on page 93, well, they'll just have to decide the first 92 pages, did they look like you really put some time and effort, and is it a good grant, you know? So sort of think about that.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and get that submitted to you then, task 1. Now, the APSL, she said that I think I had like a 8% something with Turnitin.
Oh, that was fine.
So I can go ahead and upload that to.
Did she tell you to upload it?
She said that it was great. It was 8%. Make sure I made any changes that you had suggested.
Okay.
And maybe, you know, read through it once more. But I had already done everything you suggested before I even put it into Turnitin. So.
Okay. Which is what you should do.
Right. Okay. So I mean, I think it's ready. So
just slam that sucker in.
Okay.
Put it in the evaluation file tonight before you put your head on the pillow.
Okay.
I don't know who's in Ms. Powell's group, but just make this girl turn her stuff on in. She's just trying to make it perfect. And so
She's like this at school too.
of course, the people who are saying that, it takes one to know one, right?
That's right. I'm just messing with her.
She calls me the worry wart.
I give her lots of encouragement though also.
Okay. All right. Well, now, Ms. Powell, you know that we're not picking on you, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure you realize that.
No, I know.
I call people out in meetings simply because you need to be able to say what the problem is and let us help you, no matter who you are.
I know. Yeah.
Okay. And it's all right in this group. Now there may be
and I didn't want to sit and type that annotated bibliography now if I didn't need it. Not trying to be lazy, but I'm trying to get two wrapped up and get on three.
That's not lazy. I want you to do a good job with the rest of the papers rather than doing something you didn't have to do with that paper.
Right. Okay.
All right. Are we ready to move on from the APSL and the APTL? I don't want to move until everybody's ready. If you've got a question, spit it out there. And all you people who didn't come to class that might listen to the video, shame on you for not coming, because you could have asked a question. All right. Hello. How are you, Mr. China? What can I do for you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
I'm in the same position as Ms. Powell. Dr. Todd told me to go ahead and turn it in, but when I went into TaskStream, I'm just trying to make sure I put it in the right place. So I can't remember where we were told to turn it in on TaskStream.
Well, now I can't really do a whole lot to help you there because I can't get into that. But it goes under, you have a drop down on the left, and it shows you exactly each of the semesters and what's required during the semester. And if you click on it, I would think that you can submit it right there. Am I right there, those of you that have submitted?
Yeah, there's also a video that Dr. Lamb did, and it goes through where to put it.
Well,
I watched the video.
I think it's easier even than, the videos that, he gave you one for how to set up your competency folio, and then there'll be one at the end of the class, end of the program on how to submit it to TaskStream. But I think if you just go in and click, you'll find yourself right there. So you're going to
one last question.
Tonight. Mr. China.
Yes, ma'am, I will submit tonight.
All right. I want to see. I'm going to have 2 more scores before I go to bed tonight. I am so excited. All right.
Dr. Tillman?
Yeah.
Is there a set number of observations we're supposed to do for the walkthrough thing for APTEL Task 2?
Well, we just, we sort of talked about that a little bit before, in that I guess you do as many as you can. And how many did you do?
I've done 8.
You've done 8. All right. And did you do those within a 5-day period?
Yes, I did 4 yesterday, 4 today, and I'm actually scheduled to do 4 tomorrow.
Okay. You're going to have plenty. Okay. So you just do those. If you have a dozen, that should give you a good sample. Hopefully they're across grade levels and content lessons.
Yes, I did science, social studies, math, ESL, Spanish. I've done a variety.
Yeah, that sounds just right. Go for it. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Miss James Robinson. So like Nashila was saying, I've done lots of walkthroughs with that, but does it have to be within those 5 days?
I have no way of knowing when you do them. We're just,
I mean, it would be like, it wouldn't be much further, like outside of that window, but like, if we've had a fire drill, we've had central office come in. So, I mean, it could be like within 6 or 7 days. So that would be okay.
It most certainly can, but just don't point it out, but I would just go ahead and do them, because the reason they set the time, when you do the 5-semester program, we don't set the time. We set the time to try to make sure you didn't stretch it out too far that you got behind.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it has.
Yeah, I just didn't know if I needed to start over on my observations and like do them all again.
No.
Okay, so I'm good to go. Thank you.
Sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Well, I just wanted to be upfront and just ask before I did it, or needed to redo it.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions about the APSL or the APTEL?
Well, Dr. Tillman. So with these surveys, like I gave them to all of my teachers, but I didn't get all of them back.
That's okay. You got a certain percentage of them back, and you put that in your.
All right.
All teachers were surveyed, and 89% came back, or 51% came back, or I only got 18% back. Whatever.
Okay. All right.
You just report the data. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Good question.
Okay.
And one thing I noticed, some people did not put in, and I may or may not have called you on it, because it's just one of those little things that you should do, is you need to set a what is the standard. Everything below 50% is considered a problem. Everything below 75% is a problem. It's sort of, as you're deciding what the problems are, how did you decide that? You didn't just pick and choose. You said, okay, these are below, so they're the ones. Yeah. Make sure you point
What
that.
if you just took like the lowest 3 or 4 or something like that?
Okay,
You didn't really have a percent.
What are they below? What are they?
So we need to go back. So I need to go back and figure out what they were below and say.
You don't need to do that. But
okay.
I would just say, if for people that are still in that process, if you have 3 that are above 75% and the others are below 50%, then you could say, we considered anything below 75 as a potential problem. Just so they, that they realize that you realize there should be a cutoff, not that you decided to pick and choose. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Just a few minutes on the competencies. I've had some competencies that I have made comments on. I have pointed out the competency record example on page 2 more times than I really want to do. So I'm not going to say that again. But you really need to make sure that you are reading, I hate to say this, that you're reading the definition of what you're supposed to be trying to talk about. Because some of you are not really reading what it says in the definition. And most of it's about 4 or 5 lines of print. And if you read those 4 or 5 lines of print, it'll keep you out of a lot of trouble. Because some of you are reading it and it says, oh, you have to have a digital competency here. And you're not reading beyond the fact, well, what is the digital competency about? That's something that you need to be looking at. I've had a couple of people that said they were doing, emails. Well, that is a digital competency, but that's not what it says in the definition. That's not the digital competency that definition is looking for. under that particular competency. So try to make sure you read carefully so that you're using the right thing. And the reason, these things are targeted toward projects that you're doing. And the projects that are targeted are the ones that are the easiest to find what you need. So, think about what you did in that particular project that reflects that competency like it describes it in the definition. Okay. And on task 5, by the way, for the APSL, I am absolutely amazed at how I've had 3 or 4 of those that I've read that just talked about your internship. Task 5 should have talked about things from Dr. Todd's class too. I think she might be feeling a little slighted because she's spoken about it a couple of times. All of the things that you've done in your class work, whether they've been the case studies or readings that you're supposed to do or discussions you've had, try to mention some of that in your task 5 for those of you that haven't finished the student learning one. And as you finish up task 4 in the APTL, make sure you talk a little bit about what's going on in your class related to those competencies. And actually, if it fits, you can use those in your folio. They just has to match what it says in the definition. Okay. Questions about those? And you remember it's supposed to be a paragraph. It's not a sentence. It's a paragraph. Right? Right. I'm seeing heads shake. I'm not sure I see all heads shaking. Okay, yeah, okay. I got it. Questions about competencies? Okay. So those of you that are pilgrims that happen to come to the meetings, I want you to make sure you go back to your peer group and make sure they understand what they're supposed to be doing so that we all get over this finish line. This is not a time to be competitive. We're not competing with each other right here. We're trying to lift each other up and get across the line. And I think all the people that are left, I think you can do it if you just keep pushing. Yeah.
So Dr. Tillman, Tillman, I know you wanted the competency folio information already put in, and also these tasks left. We're trying to get it all in and catch up and do good. What is if I'm doing task 2 right now and hopefully be able to turn it in tomorrow, I should go ahead and get that out the way and then work on my competency folio and then go back to task 3, or what should be my order?
The competency folio done for the APSL?
I can't even remember. It's been a while since I've been on there.
Okay.
I started it.
Well, I'm really more, I think you really should keep focusing on the APSL and the APTL. All of you need to get those things done.
Okay.
Because actually, if you do it right, you should be able to do one of those competencies in 15 minutes, 10 minutes each.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so just, get finished with the 2 projects. I have no control over Dr. Todd running them through Turnitin and getting them to task. You've got to get them over there to task stream in time to get them evaluated and get a grade back. And if, God forbid, you have to get it back and you have to work on it, we've got to have that last week to do that. So let's get those babies in. So you can say, okay, I got the 2 biggies out of the way, and then don't breathe a sigh of relief, jump right in and get the competency folio done because you're late, but you've got time to do it, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
So task and then jump on the competency folio. And then, so we have this week and then 2 more weeks, correct?
Well, that's getting right down there. I think I said the other day, I think I'm going to look up here on this piece of paper because I have my marching orders right here. And my marching orders say that by December the 15th at 8 o'clock in the morning, I have to have my grades done, and so does Dr. Todd. So I have really December the 12th is the drop dead date, but don't you all turn all a bunch of stuff in on the 12th and think I'm going to get it done by the 15th.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
I'll be seeing you next semester, remember. So don't be mean to me. Go ahead and get it turned in because you don't want it hanging over your head, you know. And Dr. Todd has more of a grading problem than I, in that she's got to grade all of those case studies, and she's got to make sure you've done all your peer reviews. And so, you know, it's on both sides of the fence. It's a lot to get done at the last minute. So,
but are our competency folio things, are they part of our grade?
Yes.
So we do have to have all of those done before the 12th also.
Oh, you have to have all of that done because I have to say that you've done it before she's going to give you a grade.
Okay.
And my course is pass fail. Mm-hmm. And in order to pass, you have to have 12 competencies that have been approved in your folio, and you have to have 2 grades of 3 or better. 1 on each of your projects. My grade is based on your portfolio, and your portfolio is a 3 on your APSL, a 3 on your APTL, and 12 competencies proficient.
So we don't have to do all 21 competencies?
You have to do all 21, but it's the 12 and the 9, okay? You have to have the 12 from the APSL and the 9 from the APTL. So there has to be a competency done for each competency, a submission.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah. And a pass-fail course, just so you realize, a pass-fail course, I have no way to give extensions. They do not allow me to do contracts. It's pass-fail. Okay. So.
Dr. Tillman?
Yes.
So one
louder,
question,
please. I've got my computer all the way up.
I'm sorry, I'll yell. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, use my teacher voice. So as far as the our internship log that we have,
yes.
Do we have to see that as well? Is that something we're going to send you at the end of the semester or not?
It's part of your competency folio. So it's at the bottom of the competency folio. That has to be in. Yes, you have to do the 80 hours.
And so I imagine that we have our site persons, our principals, sign off on it, and we scan it and add it
right.
in. Is that
That's right? Exactly right. And make sure, I would go ahead and try to get it done before the 12th or so, because that person may bounce out of the building to go someplace and they won't be back, and you need it signed.
Dr. Tillman, I have a question about that also.
Uh-huh.
If we're doing, like Lisa was talking about, our hours, and we've done a certain amount of duty, the same type of thing, do we need to list out each separate day, or can we add up all the hours?
Well, we've sort of talked about that a little bit in the past, and what I'd like you to do is for most things to do it day by day.
Okay.
If you, well, wait, but if you are assigned to do lunch duty every day, then by the week, I would say, week of whatever, put the hours. Bus duty, the same way. Afternoon duty, the same way. Okay, you can lump things like that. But going to meetings, there'll be different meetings. So you really need to put those with, so I think that's a good compromise. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody's got that straight. You have to have 80 hours. And I'm always worrying when people give me 80 and a quarter hours, or exactly 80 hours, 81 hours, 79 and 3/4 hours. So just make sure. And also, Dr. Lamb gets really incensed by people that say, oh, I did 120 hours last semester, so I don't have to do, but 40 this next semester, right? No, it's 80 hours a semester, okay? So 80 hours a semester. So you've got your log, which is part of your competency folio, and you've got your 2 projects, and you've got your work for Dr. Todd. Questions?
So as soon as we get to 80 hours, we could just go ahead and scan it, even if it's before the 12th.
You could, but I would ask that you go ahead and log the hours, because I think there may be some things coming up that you would really like to have on there. And I think in the total, since you are only doing 3 semesters, you're not going to have nearly as many hours logged as our 5-semester people. So I would just go ahead and do as many. I mean, the observer will see that you did a 3-semester program. That's understandable. But you'll be able to send this to somebody that you're applying for a job, for example. And so you don't want them to see you as a minimalist, kind of person, because you're not, I don't have many of those. Yeah. Okay, good questions. Any other questions? Okay, well, for the good of the group, if there's no other question, we'll call it a night. And those people who did not come, maybe you could talk with your peer group, or give me a call, or you can come to office hours on Sunday. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me hit this record button. Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks. Bye.